Hello, hello, hello. Welcome everybody to the Emotional Entrepreneur Show with Summer
Jen.
and Jen. Woo-hoo-hoo! We're here today and we are going to be talking about something really, really interesting. The fear of success, overcoming self-sabotage in our lives, in entrepreneurship, in our jobs. Come on, let's talk about it.
Oh my gosh, right?
This is a huge issue. And ever since we posted this, it seems to be resonating with folks out there. It seems to be like people understand this. They've been through it. They feel it. And still today are going through it, even if they're successful. I mean, I've seen incredibly successful people still saying, sometimes I do doubt myself. Sometimes I do doubt my success. So let's jump right into this. It's about the fear of success, overcoming self-sabotage. We've all been there. Maybe we're still there right now. Maybe it's getting in the way of our success. Maybe it's getting in the way of our goals. Maybe it's getting in the way of what we want to achieve. So let's talk about it. Who's out there with us?
I love it. I know she doesn't drink coffee.
I don't drink coffee.
Yeah.
This is just me. This is just me.
Yeah. So I don't drink caffeine anymore. So
you don't drink caffeine?
No.
Nice. Jen's like, I don't drink caffeine anymore. And what's up? What's with her? She doesn't drink caffeine either. I don't either. So
it's Aries.
It's that Aries energy. So, Jen, let me ask you, have you ever been there? Have you ever procrastinated, had perfectionism, had self-criticism? Those of you out there, have you experienced this as well? Put it in the comments. We want to hear from you. Jen, take it away.
Yeah. All of those things you mentioned, definitely. But mine is more the fear of failure. It's
Okay.
like, oh, what if I don't do this right? And what if I mess this up, or what if nobody buys, or it's a total flop? And, all of us have gone through those things in our head. But yeah, I mean, in some form or fashion, there's that self-doubt that comes in, and then you even mistakenly say like, oh yeah, I'm working. And there's a difference between, busyness versus actually doing the things that really push the needle forward. And where it's, is it money making activities versus just being busy? And so there's that easy trap of falling into like, oh yeah, gosh, I'm so busy. But it's like, are you doing the right activities? And that for me is something that I have gone through, many times in different seasons, where, I'm falsely labeling things as like, oh yeah, I'm so busy. And granted, there are going to be some of those things and tasks that have to be done, but I always have to pay attention to, but is this really a money making activity versus like, I'm just busy taking up time, falsely labeling it like, oh yeah, I have to do this.
Yeah, right. Okay. So I want to go back to something you said, fear of failure. Fear of failure. Now that could be one way of self-sabotaging, right? Is that fear of failure. Where does that come from? Where do we tap into in regards to what has been set in us that we have that fear of failure? Or is it perfectionism? Or is it procrastination? Or does it all come down to fear?
I think so. I think at some point all roads lead to fear.
Right?
Yeah, because it doesn't feel safe. And our mammalian brain wants to protect us, right? It's like, oh wait, no, don't do that. That's not safe. You haven't done that yet. Don't do that. And so it's just wired in us to not want to step out into that, because we were in survival mode when, early on, and at the brink of humanity starting. And so we have that fear because it's wired in us. And so we start having this battle between like, oh no, this doesn't, your brain saying like, oh, this doesn't feel safe, don't do it, you stay right here where we're comfortable. So I think, whether it's fear of success or, fear of failure, there is that inherent fear. And I love that you brought up that, where did it come from? A lot of it does stem from childhood, where, there was some incident that happened, because when we're born as babies, totally clean slate, right? But early on, you start having these experiences. You are absorbing what your parents are saying, your environment, other kids, teachers, guardians, babysitters, whatever, whoever is around you, your reality is starting to take shape. And so you start inheriting like these stories and these experiences. And somewhere along the way, either you were made fun of, you were told that wasn't going to work, you tried something, and then, anything could have happened. We all have some kind of story rooted somewhere in our childhood that is the first onset that created that pattern of fear. And then we now, I mean, I've been in so many groups where we talk about things like this. And I mean, grown adults, any age range from 30 to 70, somebody always has an experience that they can recall that went back to their childhood of where the root cause was. And it's so crazy to think like, man, like everything stemmed from something so long ago, and it's still affecting us decades later.
Absolutely. Jen, I'm going to take this even a step further, because as somebody who's been in this field of psychology and human services for years, I'm going to take it. And I started too in it was called the neonatal, something, not neonatal. It was I can't even remember. It was for people who were in the third trimester of pregnancy, who are at high risk of abuse and neglect of their children. And I did this in San Diego. I worked for this particular new parent support team, and it was for the Navy. And what we found was it didn't just start when we were born, it started prenatally. And so this fear, this anxiety, depending on what was happening in the home, what was happening to the mom, what was going on in the environment, the stress, the angst was created prenatally. And so as much as we want to think we are a clean slate, what's happening prenatally is so important too, based on what we do to our bodies. We could go deep into that, but let's go in the now. Like when people are here, born, and we can do something about it. Here's the thing. And I want to go to this too. We can do something about reducing this fear, the procrastination, the perfectionism, the fear, right? I want to read a couple of these comments really quick, and I want to welcome people. So those of you that are here, whether you're on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your comments. We want to hear from you. Put your comments in the post on Instagram, put them on LinkedIn. We will read them. So Viviana says, I think it does too. I mean, we've all been unfairly compared to someone else. It leaves a wound. And when that happens, we've heard it, right? We've heard it. Why can't you? And I know you've done this I know you said like it's been done to you with your cousin. It's been done to you in many different aspects. And it just, I don't feel like it was done to me in that way, but it was done to me like, oh, look at her. Oh, look at her and what she's doing. Or look at her. She likes those teen magazines, or she likes, oh my God, snicker, 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 right? Even a teacher did it to me. Like, I like these teen magazines. I like fashion when I was young. I liked, different things. And he starts singing this song, like, who's that doggy in the window? And I was just like, a teacher.
Wow.
And I was just like, oh, what? Are you calling me a dog? Right. So it's like, I didn't know what to think of it. And I was like 13 years old. And I was just like, and my mom never did that to me. My dad really didn't do that to me either. Like they just kind of pushed me out there and said, get up, go for it, do it. Right. So it was the other people around me. It wasn't in the family.
Oh my gosh. For me, I hated it when my mom would do this. Like, there would be like a Christmas card, and then there'd be like either a family friend or something. And then she'd be like, oh, look at so-and-so. She's graduating valedictorian, and oh, she's going to be a doctor, and she's going to UC, da, 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 da. And I'm like in high school. I'm like, yeah, and I'm thinking to myself, if you're trying to encourage me, it ain't working. I'm now pissed. I'm pissed off now because I'm like, why are you telling me this ish? Like, I don't want to hear it. Like, it's not encouraging. And I think it's also like, let me read the card on my own, but it's also this almost like this indirect subconscious comparison. It's the way it was being said. And I'm just like, yeah, and so what? That's a trigger for me. And I cannot stand it. And I don't do that to my own kid, but it's very common in Filipino families, by the way. But it's like, there's always this comparison about who's got the straight A's and who's going to be a doctor. And it's just so cringe.
Well,
I've been through it.
it's funny that you say that because it wasn't so much who's got what, but it was in our family culturally. It was you're not the boy. You're a girl.
Okay.
Yeah. So the boy is put up on the pedestal a lot of times. And so I was just like, woo. And my mom, she tried to combat that a lot of times, like, no, you can go and do whatever you want, because I have a very eclectic background. It's very unique. And so I have got Filipino, Armenian, Hispanic, and European. And so I was dealing with a lot of different cultures, a lot of different tosses and pulls and turns, a lot of different ways, because my parents were also divorced. So we were visiting that family or visiting that family. So there were a lot of cultural differences too that, really impacted how I saw the world. And my mom was always like, no, but you can do anything you want. So I was happy that she was there. I later realized, like, thank God, because she set this foundation of building me up, right?
Mm-hmm.
To be able to do what I wanted to do and not comparing me, which to other people. She said, you know what, Summer, here's what you do. You go out and you find something that you're passionate about that makes you happy, and be kind and do what you love. I don't care if it's A, B, or C, do it because you like it. She's like, her value from her dad was who you marry.
Oh, wow. See,
Your
this is like
value is based on,
so fascinating. Everybody
right?
comes from a different background.
Yes.
And because in my family, all the boys messed up. So I had it easy in that regard. It was like, yeah, it was easy for me because I
Yeah.
did I was good. I was like a
Yeah.
good student and whatnot. So for me, it was like all the boys were, messing up. So that was so not present in my dynamic, but there was a lot of comparing. So that part was just annoying, and it was always about who had the highest grades and whatnot. But it's interesting talking about these stories because we see how it has had a profound effect on who we have become and where our fears come from, and just the craziness that I mean, I just think about like all these things we're thinking about how our parents and family and environment have shaped and formed our ideas about success or failure. So
Yeah.
but I also want to read what
Yes.
Bibiana said. She was resonating with what you said. She said mine operated that way as well. It was upsetting to think that no matter what I did, I couldn't be a boy, so I drew the short straw.
Yeah, totally. Oh my gosh. I totally hear that. I feel that. And it took a lot to overcome, right? And like I said, I was just so thankful as I look back on my past to see a mother that actually created a foundation who was like, oh no, that is not true. That is a falsehood, right? So you can do anything and everything you want. Now, here's what she did tell me too, though, is we are going to fall. We are going to have a misstep, but you're responsible for getting back up and figuring out a way to do that.
Did she use the word misstep?
No, she said.
Oh, okay. I was like, oh, is that where you got it from?
No, that's my word. But I will tell you, she used stronger words than that. She's like, you are going to fail or you're not going to achieve A, B, and C. That's okay. And sometimes we're not made to do A, B, or C, but figure out a way. If you want to do it, you can figure out a way to do it. Like I knew that I didn't like speaking early on, but I didn't know exactly why, like speaking on a stage.
Right.
And I didn't realize that up until like recently, or not recently, in the past few decades, why? And I realized like it's not just because of going on stage, but I tend to forget things. And I actually got
Mm,
tested for a short-term memory issue, right? And so when I get nervous, that issue goes up. And then I
right.
have an auditory processing deficit, which you would never know because I compensate for it very well. And it's not a hearing issue, it's how I process things, right? So it's like you may say something, and it really happens when people have strong accents. So the thing about it is, it's it's really about, what are you dealing with? What does that look like for you? What are you avoiding? Is it perfectionism? Is it procrastination that's creating the self-sabotage? And I want to touch on one thing too, avoidance.
Mm,
Why we might avoid things. And something that came up as I was reading and doing some research before getting into this subject is, and I found very interesting, avoidance or avoiding tasks or situations that could lead to success due to fear of the responsibility or expectations that come with it. And I was like,
expectations, that's
oh,
another word.
what? Say that again.
Expectations, that's a whole nother word. Yeah.
Right. But here's what's interesting, avoidance, because of the fear of the responsibility or expectations that come with it. Have you ever been there? Have you ever not taken something on because you're like, I don't know if I want to do that. And I can remember like earlier in my career going, well, do I really want to go into this directorship role, right? At a
Mm.
hospital, because am I ready? Am I ready for
Oh,
all
okay.
that? Am I ready for those responsibilities? Am I ready for all that comes with that? I'd never done that at that point, right? So I was just like, who can I do this? And there was that doubt, there was that
Mm.
fear, but I was like, hell with it. I'm going to jump all in and I'm going to see what I can do. And guess what? I kept that hospital at 99% full every single day.
It's
Every single day.
you push through it.
I
And
pushed through it.
that's the difference. That's the
I
difference.
pushed through that fear, right?
Right.
I pushed through that doubt. Who's been there? Who has experienced this? I know that I'm not the only one who's experienced this. Tell me, if you're out there and you've experienced this doubt, this fear, this procrastination, this avoidance, because you feel like, oh my gosh, I can't do this, or it's that mindset of, it's triggering something in you where you just freeze and go, either I'm so fearful that I freeze, or I'm not going to do this because I might have a misstep or I might fail. Have you
Mm.
ever done that? Just like entrepreneurship. This is new to a lot of us, this entrepreneurship thing. Have you ever feared it so much that you haven't started? You just didn't begin?
For me, it's a game. There's many times where I'm like, I don't know if I could do it, but I just do go for it anyway.
Yeah.
Because, but this is the process. The times that I have done, let's say, a project or a job or whatever in the past, it always like within like the first day or two, I start to realize very fast that this is actually easy. It
Hmm.
always seems more hyped up before I start it.
Yeah.
And then when I'm actually in it, I'm just like, okay, I'm bored already. And so
Yeah.
because I've gone through that process enough times, even when I had no idea the full capacity of what was involved, it always ended up becoming easy. And then I got bored real fast, or I figured it out real fast. So then what ends up happening is, because I had that experience, I always just walk into everything now just like, I'm gonna figure it out. I'm
Yeah.
just gonna figure it out because I've done it before where I they made it sound like it was all this and that, and then I walk into it and it's so easy, and I've got figured out.
Yeah.
So, and that even goes into pricing. There's times
Yeah.
where I think our fears are affecting how we price projects, how we price contracts, and then we're like, oh my gosh, your fear is stopping you from pricing it properly,
Yeah.
and then you sell yourself short. So a
Yeah.
lot of times you go into this thing and then you're just like, again, if you take my experience, I'm just like, okay, this is like really easy. Why did I only ask for X amount? And then I feel like crap
Yeah.
because I'm still giving my best, I'm doing my all, but I forget sometimes, like, and trust me, I don't do this anymore. But I think about all the experience I had is the expertise that I've gathered over the decades to allow me and to be entitled to fair compensation for the work and value that I'm bringing. So even though I might be a little worried because it's not always like completely gone, it is there, but like summer push through, I'm just like, no, I'm gonna figure this out, and it's going to be, you know, badass. It's gonna be awesome, and I'm gonna deliver. And then I feel good about it going to the project. Yeah, there's some fear, but I know from the experience that I'm gonna figure this out, and I'm not gonna sell myself short. So that's the other thing too. You know, I'm always thinking about, I can't allow any fear affect the financial part, because how many times have you guys gone into something and you're just like, gosh, why did I only charge that much? And it
Yeah.
shifts the energy, and it's a yucky space because you still are, you know, if you have integrity, you're still going to do a good job. But let's be real. There is something in the back of your brain that's saying like, I should be making so much more. And I never like that feeling. I want it to feel good. I want to know that I'm delivering my best, but I'm also, you know, feeling good about the exchange of the value of what I'm getting paid and the value of what I'm giving them.
I love that, Jen. I want to read a couple of things here because there's so many people who've you know, chimed in here.
Mm.
Chantel, hello there, lady. Bibiana, my brothers are extremely accomplished. So yeah, it was a lot.
Oh.
And then Cynthia says, yeah, B, I get that. Chantel, aw, we miss you too. And then Bibiana says, you're the coolest, Cynthia. Being compared as a kid just really hits hard. And I think we carry that with us. We absolutely do. And Chantel says, oh, avoidance and all of it. Yep. And then Bibiana says, I'm fine most of the time. Then something happens and I'm geeky. I'm the geeky kid who didn't get chosen in gym class again. And
Aww.
Cynthia says, we do be. It never really goes away. It's learning to recognize it and manage it. And Bibiana says, same, see, yeah, that little voice needs to sit down. We are getting better than that. We've got the receipts, and we do. And I think here's the thing, and I want to go back to something that was said, and I want to touch on a few things that you said, Jen. Earlier, you said, you know, we were made this way to survive, right? Well, back in the day when we were like forging and you know, trying to find our food together, we needed each other. We needed a community, and it was survival. That's why we have this thing called the amygdala in the back of our brain, right? That is our organ that's a fight or fight response system, right? We can't get rid of that. We have medications to calm that, but we don't want to get rid of that because we need some of that to be in that zone, to be able to get away, to be able to, when we do have things that are a danger to us, right? But we now have the choice. Here's where the frontal lobe, the front of your brain, comes into process and play, is we have choices. We can think about what those choices are right here. And what are those choices going to be? Is it going to be difficult? Are those emotions, this is why this is called the emotional entrepreneur, folks, are those emotions going to take precedence and keep you from doing something that you really are passionate about? Something that you want to try? Is it going to keep you in that procrastination phase, that perfectionism phase, that avoidance phase, that self-criticism phase? Because we've all been there, but we have a choice. Remember, the front of your brain, that area will allow you to set goals, to have mind shifts, to do the whole energy bit, right? That is here and throughout your body. And that's why we have things like tapping to lower our anxiety, our pressure points, our, you know, because our whole body feels it. And when you feel it and you know it and you recognize what's going on, it can make such a difference. Does that pain come up every so often, as Bibiana said, as Cynthia said? Yes, ever so often, but don't ignore it. Recognize it. As Cynthia said, we manage it, but we can do better than manage it. I think we can understand it. We can be kinder to ourselves. We can set those goals. We can nurture ourselves. We can have accountability partners and buddies, right? To help keep us aligned. I'm going to go back to something you said, Jen. And that was when you're asking for a price, because that is your value, the value that you're giving. I've listened to Jen. And guess what? It felt good because I actually asked for my worth and my value. And I didn't feel like, oh my God, I just gave this away. Because what
Yeah.
happens is when you start preparing for a talk or you start preparing for a workshop, you don't realize, oh my God, so much prep goes into that. And then all of a sudden, so much, rehearsal goes into that. And then, the actual presentation, and then, blah, 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 it goes on. And so you need to value yourself. The other thing I want to talk about too is not just pricing, but approaching people, pitching people for your services. It's a scary thing. Why is it
Mhm.
scary? Because maybe we're doubting a little bit about our ability or our expertise, but you got it. You have it. So again, it's a mindset. Again, it's feeling and saying those affirmations of, I'm ready. I can do this. I have this expertise. So visualize the success. Write those affirmations. Reframe that failure into learning. There are so many ways that we can really turn this around so that we don't fear success, that we get out of the way of ourselves. It's, are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? Jen?
I love this topic. I love this topic. Yeah. Oh, let me read what Bibiana said. Same, Cynthia. Yeah, that little voice needs to sit down. We are better than that. Oh, no, you did read that.
Yeah,
You did read that.
I did.
But yeah, you know what? To respond to that, what Bibiana said, it's that voice. And so, what can we do in those times when we're hearing that voice? What are some things that you can do to calm yourself down so you're not feeding into that voice, right? And I've heard people call them like gremlins and stuff, like, I have this one here and I have this one here, like the cartoons, like the devil and the angel. But
Right.
do you find yourself, which one do you start leaning towards? The one that's in scarcity mode or the one that's, in abundance mode? So we have to really pay attention to, what are we doing when we get into that moment? How are we finding ways? Like, I love that you mentioned tapping, Summer.
Yeah.
Or breathing, and just all those different things that we can do, and just recognize, like, this fear doesn't really have to take over. It's really, I like the phrase, how's it go, like, do it afraid anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, just do it afraid anyway. And I know that sounds weird and it doesn't feel good. Like, it doesn't. It feels very like, oh gosh, this is not comfortable. But I think if we can focus at those times when, visualize yourself on the other side of it. Because I can tell you, when I went into it with fear, and then I put all these, self-sabotaging blocks, like, okay, well, I'll just charge less. Or, okay, like, okay, maybe maybe I'm asking for too much. Or whatever the case, or I started taking away or putting more because I wanted to compensate for, like, oh my gosh, maybe I'm not good enough, and I'll just add all this other extra stuff. And I just hated the way it felt, because I was so devaluing myself and the work. And so I now just always try to visualize, like, on me already on the other side, and be like, no, this is going to work out great. They're going to be happy with what I do. I'm going to feel good about it. This is going to be all clean energy. Like, it's a great transaction, regardless of how I'm entering it in terms of fear. Because just know there's that knowing and that trusting in yourself and your ability you'll figure it out. And I think we have to just sit in that and just trust ourselves, even though that feeling of, like, oh gosh, I don't know. And also, we've talked about this too in the past about detachment. I think, like that definition you said, somewhere about the expectations.
Yeah.
That detachment to the outcome, where if we're so attached to it, and it's just like, let's say the proposal you send out gets rejected, or they say, like, okay, we decided to go with somebody else, or, thank you, but we'll keep you in consideration for next time. And just be like, okay, great. I reframe it in my mind if that ever happens, and say, like, okay, whoever got it was probably a better fit. Maybe that person needed it more than I did, but there's something else coming for me. And when I have that kind of energy around the rejection or whatever, I was turned down, I don't get upset. I'm just be like, okay. And then I just move on. And it's a little harder, I will say, in times when you really needed that money. Like, I've been there. It's just like, damn, it sucks, I needed that.
Yeah.
I still will go through that process of reframing it and be like, okay, you know what? I'm going to just bless that situation and, whoever was on the receiving end of this contract, and I'm sure they were a better fit and that was meant for them. But there's something else meant for me and this just isn't it right now. And when I have that kind of approach, I don't get caught up in this whole thing about like, gosh, you know what? Maybe I wasn't good enough. Maybe they didn't like me. Maybe I don't go there. It's
Yeah.
just not going to serve you if you go there. So try to find ways to reframe the rejection in a different light that, okay, well, there was that door closed, but because if I took that and it wasn't meant for me, I wouldn't be available for something else that's coming down the road. And that has happened to
Absolutely.
me so many freaking times and that's another thing too, I do. When I know there's a rejection, I'm kind of like, okay, cool. Something better is going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay, something else is going to come my way and I needed to be available to do that. And it always does. It always does. And even with investing in certain things, I'm like so happy when I didn't say yes to something here because something else came along. And I'm just like, gosh, if I had said that, yeah, if I had moved forward over here, I would not have been able to go down this road. And so I just know that that's always available to us. That's always unfolding for us. And so clean energy, reframe the rejection, and it just works out. And just trusting, even though it may be cringy, it may suck that there was a rejection, it may feel like, how come nothing's working? Just know that God and the universe has such a much bigger perspective on the path. We're just little humans in this 3D world seeing what's here in front of us when everything else is so much bigger.
Absolutely. You know, there's so many things I love here. I want to give you a quick story. I remember when I was in law school, I was this 21-year-old and I went and drove my car from California to Connecticut, and I was alone. I had no networks. I didn't know anybody. And I thought, I'm going to do this. And I remember like when it come to a test, and I'm telling you, if anybody has seen the movie Paper Chase, it was
Mm.
just like that movie. It was just daunting. It was extremely difficult for me. I I was trying to figure myself out. And I remember driving from where I lived in the law school apartments to the campus, and I thought I would cry myself all the way there.
Mm.
I'd be like, oh my God. And it was almost cathartic because I was like, I needed to do it just to get into the right mindset.
Sure.
And so because I was so afraid. I was so
Wow.
afraid. But I'd go anyway in that fear. And yet it was important for me to work through that because I knew I wanted to be there. But how much did I want to be there? Was I going to make that my ultimate goal? And so I do want to mention something. When you start thinking about these things, you don't necessarily have to look at the big goal. Look at the smaller pieces. Look what's right in front of you. And I want to get down to just the very organic. And it's something that you said, clean energy.
Mm.
We don't have to use all these big words like procrastination, perfectionism, blah, blah, blah. What it comes down to is fear. Fear, getting in the way of yourself. Let's make it simple. How can you get out of the way of yourself? And this leads me to, we can cover this for many hours. We've been here. We've all been there. Sometimes we face it on a daily. Sometimes we get little bits of it during our day, during our week, during our month in regards to, ooh, how is that hitting me today? Right. But think about it as a learning situation. Think about it in small goals, not the overwhelming picture. I want to go to our nugget, Jen, because we've mentioned so many things here. This has been an incredible conversation. This can be really heavy, but it doesn't have to be. If you have any questions for Jen and I, please always feel free to DM us because we're here to be of support to you. But Jen, what's your nugget for today?
My nugget is, if you don't have one already, develop a simple ritual. Like if you're going to go through this situation of, sending in a proposal or getting rejected or just you start having that doubt come in, like what is the thing that you can do? Is it you slowing down? Is it you just shutting everything off? Is it you just sitting in silence and praying, meditating, light a candle? Like, what is it that you can just slow yourself down and then just like, okay, what's going on here? Let me reset. and then remind yourself of like how amazing you are. Because I think when that fear starts to come in, we start to forget, like, wait a minute, I'm so freaking amazing and I've done this and this and this. Remind yourself of that. And then once you're done resetting, go back to the thing and be like, you know what, screw it, I'm sending it. You know what, screw it, I'm asking for 5,000 more, whatever the case may be. But do that reset or whatever that ritual is so that you can reframe your mindset and then move forward in that situation when it feels cringy.
Yeah, love that, Jen.
How
Love
about
it.
you? What's your nugget?
I would say my nugget is, and this has been something that's really been helpful over the years. I had my mom in the beginning, in the middle, I had some of this, and I had to go out and find it. And that is accountability partners, those people in a community that I could build trust with, that I could build transparency with, that I could build honesty with, where we can talk about these things and I could get objective perspectives, because that is so important. So choose or find or develop a community, an accountability partner to help you, because sometimes we do need that objectivity. Sometimes we are in that situation or place of doubt where we just need that objectivity and we need some clarity. And it's not to say that that's going to be all that we need, but it comes from within. Everything you need is within you, but we do at times need somebody to connect with, somebody to pass something to, saying, hey, am I thinking about this in the right way? Just like I asked Jen, where we had this conversation about, what price should I put on this, or what's the value of this service? And that was really helpful, because guess what? I got it. I got what I wanted.
I love stories like that. I gotta tell you guys, I have friends that go through that process with me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, they're like, what do you think of this? And I'm always telling them, add more. Always.
Yes.
Every time I have had this conversation with a friend, I'm like, add more. They're like, are you sure? Just do it. And then I'm like, I want you to tell me later that you sent it and you asked for that. And I'm gonna tell you, I have not lost a case. Everybody will tell me that they said yes. And I'm like, I knew they would. So I'm like, yes.
And no matter where you are in your journey, guess what? Whether or not you're this, PhD, or you're somewhere else and you don't have to have a PhD, it doesn't matter. Like, even if you want to be a plumber, that's an amazing job. Trust me, I wish I had that skill. Or an electrician, I wish I had that skill. Go ask, go pitch it.
Right.
Because guess what? You'll probably get it.
Totally.
So with that said, please join in. Woo! This is such a good time. We always enjoy being here with all of you. Stay tuned for next Tuesday. We're also going to be starting to talk about mentorship and how important this is, and some different aspects of mentorship that we really want to bring to light. So with that said, thank you all for joining us. Join us here next Tuesday. This was so exciting. We always have the best time with you. Ready to dance this out, Jen?
Let's do it. Thank you guys for being here.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye. Take care. Hi, everyone. Have a great week.